Perfect. So I'll just go straight in then. So the first
Yeah,
section
yeah, go
is
for it.
about the state of children's handwriting in secondary schools.
Yeah.
So my secondary research has basically suggested that there's been a decline in handwriting. So a lot of kids are going from primary to secondary, and they're failing to meet required handwriting, like the required handwriting standards.
Hmm.
So I kind of just wanted to explore that if you've experienced that basically. So
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
what is the current standard of handwriting among secondary school students in the UK?
Um, I would at least, so I work in an international school, so we
Hmm.
have students from everywhere around the world. And some kids come from other international schools in other places around the world again. Other people come from local schools.
Mm.
So I'm not sure if I ever really see a correlation there, but I can absolutely with 100% confidence say that, yeah, I do think that handwriting in general has declined in quality
Mm.
over at least the last few years. But definitely from when I remember myself being in school, there were
Yes.
so many things that we had to do in terms of, like handwriting practice. And again, that I guess what you were saying about fine motor skills
Mm.
really contributes to training, students to write neatly within the lines or
Mhm.
write in a certain way that is legible to most other people.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I do think that it's a lot of kids do struggle with that,
Mhm.
100%. And I think because I have kids write a lot in their books and art, for example. I don't like having students. Obviously, we have kids who have special educational needs who do have
Mhm.
like an entitlement to use a word processor or a laptop.
Yeah.
So we have students who do that. Obviously, they have like they struggle with their fine motor skills and also gross motor skills and they have several things like dysgraphia or dyslexia. So
Yeah. Yes,
obviously,
of course.
they're kind of, I suppose, like aside or outside of the equation. But with all of the other students as well, you can
Mm.
see that there's quite a clear struggle. I mean, and then that also reflects in spelling and
Mhm.
grammar as well. So
Mhm.
spelling, punctuation, grammar is also very much on the decline, from what I can see. And I think that
Mhm.
kids are like quite reliant on technology to
Yeah.
make sure that they can express themselves in terms of writing and also in terms of the structure of the writing that they have.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for
have
sure.
you experienced then sort of like very poor or unreadable handwriting in within your years?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say unreadable. So my father has really terrible handwriting, so I've like
Mhm.
had to grow up trying to decipher people's handwriting.
Mhm.
Um, So I think that a lot of the time it takes a lot of effort and a lot of understanding to read some students' handwriting. Absolutely.
Mm.
Um, I think a lot of the time there is a heavy correlation again between like kids who have educational needs or a specific set of educational needs
Mhm.
and students who struggle with their handwriting. But I think, those problems become more pronounced the older the students get as well.
Mhm.
In terms of, so I teach like the middle years, so that's year 7 to 11.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't teach year 7 this year, but I have in the past.
Yeah.
And I think generally, yeah, the struggles that are there already to begin
Mm.
with year 7 just gets more and more kind of stressful and worse for the
Mhm.
student as it goes along. So that by the time they're year 11, if they haven't been diagnosed, then
Mhm.
there's a clear kind of like aversion to handwriting, and they feel like a lack of confidence when it comes to not just writing but drawing as well. So
Yeah.
again in
Yeah.
art and design, that seems to be the like pervasive issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. So is there any kind of strategies then for like secondary school students that when a kid does have really poor handwriting, like,
Mm.
is there anything that you do or like the school kind of does to put in place, or is it that they give them a laptop, or how does that kind of work?
I think there are a lot of different methods. Definitely, if they're on our SEN register,
Mm,
again, we give them either like, and for assessments as well, we give them additional time and we give them use of a word processor. So it's
mm,
not like, again, the like lack of comfortability with, writing doesn't get in the way
mm,
of them demonstrating their knowledge. But then obviously for me in my profession or in my teaching area, it can be quite like detrimental not to have students be using handwriting. So a lot of the time I will insist, and what I think a lot of students do struggle with when they do struggle with handwriting is writing long paragraphs and long bits.
mm, mm,
So it's also like giving them time or giving them moments in the class to take a
mm,
break, so not to be gripping or using a pencil. And again, I think that helps a lot with the kids who struggle with motor skills as well, is like giving them. I know that we have occupational therapists who come in,
mm.
and they help students sometimes
That's
who do
good.
have, again, these issues,
Yeah,
with like hand exercises and stuff.
nice. Yeah.
So I try to, yeah, reflect that in my teaching as well, even if students aren't on or don't have specific needs, to make
Mm,
sure that they're getting a kind of break from using a pen or a pencil.
mm,
But honestly, a lot of it is also just like making sure that, with it, when it comes to drawing, especially, we have like entire sections of our assessed work devoted to developing skills and
mm-hmm.
developing ideas. So having them practice over and over again,
Yeah.
much like, again, we would have at school, although I'm significantly older than you are, but, like at school, practicing with different kinds of tools as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
not just a pencil, not just a pen, but different kinds of materials is, I think, useful for me in order to
Mm.
troubleshoot these things.
Yeah.
But it's also like going back to the basic of how to hold a pencil, how to
Yeah.
hold
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
pen,
Definitely.
and then changing how people hold their tools or their instruments depending on what
Mm.
kind of a line they want to make, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's something that you could probably see in fountain pens as well, right? It's because, like,
Mm.
if you change a little bit of the angle, you have a different kind of way that the ink comes out, and
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that's a bit old fashioned. Probably with Lamy, you don't have that kind of issue because it's very
It
smooth
is.
and easy to
It
use.
is. Yeah. With Lamy pens. I'm not sure about exactly about the Safari, but I've got a like Lamy Studio, and it is very like because all of our friends have, all of my friends have been using it, and you do sort of see like with different ways of how every person's used it, regardless of the actual writing itself. But it's like the ink flow
Yeah,
does change. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah, I think for me, the reason why I kind of feel that fountain pens could almost not make a comeback because they're still used in like primary school in some schools, but
Okay, are they?
yes, yeah, yeah, because it's but I think for secondary schools, especially with kind of yeah like long writing tasks and
Mm-hmm.
um almost even just like kind of like bringing like back some of the pride in your work and things, you know what I mean? I think a
Mm-hmm.
fountain pen can really bring that for a person just because that's kind of what happened with me. So yeah, that's kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where, and then obviously, yeah, with the kind of decline of handwriting, it just feels right to
Yeah.
kind of be like, yeah, there's a decline. This really helped me at school. Other people I've spoken to felt that. So maybe we pair those two together kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I think there has been, like, I know this sounds, I think it's probably more niche than I'm thinking it is in my head, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of girls are very into like cursive writing and stuff, and
Yes. Yeah,
they're
yeah,
often using like a highlighter, and then
yeah.
like they do it quite like large, and then they do like a little like just in an ink pen or like a gel pen,
Yeah.
like written thing in the inside. So I think that there is some still like pride and kind of, you know what I mean, like in
Mm-hmm.
craftsmanship and in
Mm,
making things look beautiful.
mm-hmm.
It just doesn't necessarily transcend, especially between the girl boy divide. I
Yeah.
think in within schools, it's
Yeah.
quite, it is a lot more common to see handwriting issues. I think, or at least from my personal experience
Mm.
in boys, and I think that they tend to rush it, you know, whereas I have seen, absolutely have seen issues with girls, or you know, like this discomfort with
Mm.
girls as well, but I do tend to see it more often with boys, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting.
And it might be, yeah, it might be due to a lack of care, I'm not sure.
Mm. Yeah.
Or it might just be that they're not necessarily super invested in developing that skill of
Mm-hmm.
writing something that's
Definitely.
um super legible.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah.
So I believe your school is like every kid has a laptop as well.
Yeah, we do have
Um,
laptops.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that mean your exams are on digital? Like, obviously, art is actually, it will be physical, but do you know if
Yeah,
other kids in that school kind of do their exams on paper or on like laptops and screens?
that's a really good question. So we teach at an IB school, so it's different from GCSE A level type stuff.
Yeah.
I would say that almost all of the assessments that we do at MYP, so middle years
Mm.
level, is done digitally.
Right. Okay.
So using digital platforms, yeah. Um, I think when it gets to the IB exams,
Mm.
they are paper exams.
Right.
So students, if they don't again have a special kind of
Mm.
accommodation in place, will need to be using a pen
Mm-hmm.
and paper to be writing their
Yeah.
things. With art, it's different because they have a
Yeah. Of
portfolio
course.
and they
Yeah.
create a digital body of work as well to do
Mm.
the writing most of the time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is IB what year's age is that? Is that year A
So it's
levels?
it's Yeah, so international baccalaureate, it's like it goes from primary to yeah, like college level,
Okay, yeah.
but they would be doing their exams like A levels, yeah, same
Mm-hmm.
exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anything before that is a little bit less formal in terms of assessments.
Mm-hmm.
So we just assess like internally within the school, but we don't send the assessments out
Yeah.
to the IB, much like we would at, you know, year 13 is when they would be doing their final exam.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
And finally for that
that's all right.
section
Mhm.
is can when you're kind of marking, can bad handwriting affect the way you mark? So you touched on it slightly earlier that obviously your dad has quite bad or yeah, struggled, so you're quite kind of good at it, but you do have to find yourself kind of picking it out more and slowing down. Is it something that would affect their kind of grade as well, or if you like really can't read it, or kind of what happens with that?
That's a really good question.
Mm,
I think when it comes to grading, I um try to be as, so with digital design everything is done digitally, so I can
mm,
kind of
mm,
disregard that area, but for art a lot of it is in the book. And I think at the end of the day, no, but also yes. So I
mm,
try not to let it affect um, my grading in terms of what I'm really looking for in the student's work. And obviously, this is dictated by the assessment criteria for each kind of like area of the work, the unit of work we're doing.
mm-hmm.
But you know, a lot of the time, what I'm looking for is, you know, the terminology, that they're
Yeah.
demonstrating the understanding of the terminology,
Mm-hmm.
and that they have like analytical and observation skills down. So a lot of the time they're not even doing big chunks of writing, they're doing kind
Mm-hmm.
of annotations
Mm-hmm.
for their artwork. And so like for that area, for me, you know, it's not at all an issue. Yeah, it might be a little bit, it takes some time to decipher what they've written down. Um, and sometimes I guess it does factor into how they present their work as well, which is something that I do take into consideration, right? Is like,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, you have a page of paper in front of you. Like, is it presented in a way that
Mm-hmm.
is creative, that is organized, that's a way that like they can communicate their ideas and thoughts to me, or is it a
Mhm.
little bit confusing and messy? And I, again, try not to put that into the equation too much, but again,
Mhm.
I think that that does factor in sometimes when you're going, okay, what is the point that's trying to be
Mhm.
communicated here? And I think that that reflects the struggle of the student as well, going, like trying to focus their energy so much onto the handwriting and going,
Mhm.
like what is the point I'm trying to make? I don't want to write as much because my hand is tired,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah, but I don't again find myself struggling too much. There are special or specific cases where they're like, yeah, absolutely, it takes a while for me to understand and read. But most of the time, yeah, either they are again able to use their laptop, or there is no major significant issue with the handwriting, so I can read
Mhm.
what's
Mhm.
written down. But that is a really good point. Sometimes
Thank you.
sometimes yeah, maybe subconsciously it's affecting the way
Mhm.
that I'm looking at their work. 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So with this section is about kind of students' writing habits. Um,
Okay.
so um, how do you typically, oh no, sorry. How do students typically respond to handwriting tasks sorry,
Yeah.
compared to
No, it's fine.
tasks that require like typing? So yeah, kind of because obviously you've got quite a good split with um the book and then the digital portfolio. Is there sort of
Mm-hmm.
a difference in feeling towards when they've got to do writing or at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that I think though that a lot of the time it's to do more with the nature of written tasks versus
Mm,
practical tasks, where students
right.
do find practical tasks a lot more fun or exciting. But again, we have students that are not, like 100% confident with their skills, and
Mm,
that can reflect both in their handwriting and in their kind of like drawing skills as well.
mhm, mm,
So there is a bit of a gap, but a lot of the time I do think that it's more to do with the nature of the task, which is analysis or
mhm.
explanation, justification, and yeah, less to
Yeah,
maybe do with the actual physical act of handwriting.
definitely,
I
definitely.
will say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you encourage your students at all to take pride into their handwriting at all? Especially if they're kind of not naturally inclined to, obviously you've got some of the like the girls and the boys who like make it all fancy and pretty, but what about the ones
Mm-hmm.
that kind of don't? Is there any sort of encouragement there
Yeah.
at all or?
That's a good question. Um, I try not to comment too much on handwriting, I think, at the
Mm,
end of the day, especially for a section that is just writing, or is writing kind of writing heavy. I might try to comment on, like, again, how a student is creatively expressing their idea on the page, rather than
mhm,
looking at the actual writing themselves. And I think, sometimes you can see again when a student's really taking care or really taking the initiative to be like, okay,
mhm,
I'm going to use a specific pen, I'm going to use a specific, and their ideas are there, even though maybe the writing isn't super neat or
mm,
super, like legible, but they've really put that thought and effort into it, and that's where I would be like, that looks great, that looks really nice.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, for me, I think that part counts more than the kind of what the actual uh, writing and the letters themselves
Yeah,
look like.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
definitely.
where I would put the reward
Yeah, no,
and
that makes
the
sense.
positive comments in. Yeah,
Lovely.
depending on the year though, I think the grades. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you feel that
Mm.
handwriting is still relevant then in secondary schools or in your school?
Yeah, I do. I do think it is relevant, and I think like and I know that that kind of contradicts what I just said about, like trying not to focus too much on the ability, but I think that's also a reflection of like not being able to change, at this
Mm,
stage when they've gotten to the age of 13, 14.
mm,
Like I don't feel like I'm well equipped enough to change a student's
mm,
um level and quality of handwriting.
mm-hmm,
So I'm, trying to, I guess, like not call attention to things that are going to be like a point of maybe like shame or weakness, or
mm-hmm.
like something that's going to upset a student potentially.
Yeah.
um because again, you still do get kids looking at each other's work and comparing and going, oh my god, you have such beautiful handwriting, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll look at my handwriting and be like, oh miss, you have great handwriting, etc. um and so yeah, but I do think handwriting should be a lot more valued
Mm,
within school. And I think that there's so much about like holding a pen, learning how to hold a pen, penmanship, all
mm,
of that. And like just and making sure that like you're practicing it over and over is really important at the younger age, of course.
mm-hmm,
Is
mm-hmm,
so important because it really does then like trickle into and factor into how students know how to hold other, again, tools. And for
definitely.
me that means, yeah, a paintbrush. It
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
mean an ink pen. And I ran a unit last year in art, actually for a few years in art, where
Mm,
I had students use like a pot of ink and something like a fountain pen.
mm,
It's basically like a quill, except doesn't have a feather on the end of
yeah,
it, so it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
one of those really old-fashioned ink pens.
Nice. Yeah.
And I had them do ink drawings because we were studying Van Gogh and we're looking at kind of the artwork that he did with ink.
Mm,
And again, there's a very clear divide in this school or in that class. So that was year 8. So they were 12,
yeah.
13-ish.
Yeah.
So there's a very clear divide, even at that stage, between students who are comfortable with holding that pen and then kind of
Mm,
using it at different angles to produce different kinds of lines, thicker lines, tapered lines, thinner lines,
mm-hmm.
versus students who are like, I can't even get the ink to come out because they
Yeah.
couldn't hold it the way that, you know what I mean? And like they
Yeah,
would dip too
definitely,
much ink
definitely.
in.
Yeah.
So it becomes really, really hard and it's a huge struggle. And I think that just kind of decreases, again, from an art perspective, like the versatility of someone's,
Mm,
work, not being able to use different tools. And again, practicing and practicing, obviously then you make some progress,
mm,
some students more, some students less, but not being able to do that is, I think it can be detrimental.
yeah.
And that shows up in digital stuff as well. We do
Mm,
use iPads and Apple Pencils in
yeah.
digital design, for example. And we used to use Wacom tablets, which are these kind of like tablets that you can draw on, and if you connect it to the screen, you could see what you're
Yeah.
drawing on the screen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like a lot of graphic
That's cool.
designers use that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously with an iPad, students, because kids are so familiar with iPads now,
Yeah. Native to
it
it.
feels, yeah, totally. It feels so like intuitive to them.
Mm,
And I think that sometimes even the sensation of having like a pencil on an iPad screen is completely different to
mm,
having a pen, having a pencil, and so that warps it again, that changes it as well. Wacom tablets were just impossible actually to use,
yeah.
because again, students don't. It's that like spatial awareness thing of like being able to, like, I'm looking at the screen, but I'm
Mm,
writing something,
yeah.
below,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that like coordination, that hand-eye coordination is like simply not there in a lot of
Interesting.
kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that was another kind of big uphill battle as well, is
Mm,
to kind of understand, is it to do with the act of writing
mm,
itself, the act of holding a pen itself, or is it to do with, like, for example, drawing something from observation, you'd have to look up and you'd have to, you know what I mean, like draw
definitely.
whilst you're looking not at the paper, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so getting students to get more kind of familiar and comfortable with that is another part maybe of working or it could be linked to the handwriting
That's
thing,
really,
perhaps.
yeah, that's really helpful actually, because
Hmm.
I hadn't actually really given that a thought as well, kind of in, yeah,
Hmm.
in lesson, because I would be in class and I'll be writing, but also like watching and
Hmm.
listening up, because you
Hmm.
can just do that like from, but yeah, if the fact that kids kind of are struggling to even do that, it's really, really interesting now.
I don't think a lot of kids are able to. Yeah, I
Mm.
see a lot of this again while I say, because I don't have students take notes very often, but I have specific classes where I'm like, okay, today we're going to take notes and I'm going to,
Yeah, yeah,
like mark you on your notes. And they'll be doing, like this, stop,
yeah, yeah,
look
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Wait, miss, don't go, don't go ahead because I need to finish writing this bit.
yeah,
And it just takes longer for them as well. And so I think
yeah.
it can be a struggle. Yeah,
Mm.
a
And
hundred percent.
even just like memory retention as well, because I guess
Yeah.
if you always kind of got a screen and you're relying on a screen, and it
Mm.
obviously helps your spelling mistakes and that, it's really easy to just kind of,
Yeah.
then once it goes down off do you know what I mean? Like I don't know, I feel like
Yeah.
there's a difference when you write something, you're
Yeah.
able to remember that, and I feel like that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. A
important.
100%. I totally agree. And like personally, if I didn't like, I need to write like a to-do list down on
Mm,
paper.
hmm.
Otherwise, I don't feel like it's gone through my head. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And I
yeah,
know that we live in a world of like iPhone reminders and
mm,
like to-do lists that are digital, and that's totally fine. And I know that I can use that for some things, but for work, I find it really difficult
mm,
to have digital things. So I need to have everything written down on like
yeah,
a piece of paper somewhere.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and that's useful for me. I
Mm.
understand.
But the thing with that as well that's interesting is that we know, because of how, yeah, it was slightly different when we was kind of growing up. We
Yeah,
know that that's
yeah,
helps us, but kids
yeah.
nowadays don't have, well, say that they do have the, but
Mm,
they're not as aware of that kind of option, or do you know what I mean? Kind of
yeah,
that like,
I think
right,
I do. Yeah.
yeah, like write it down, because I'm the same with writing notes when I'm doing my work on my laptop and it's getting, my head's literally all over the place. I have to get my notepad
Mm-hmm,
out and jot it down on there, and then it's cleared up. Do you know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm,
feel
mm-hmm.
like, yeah, yeah, that's kind of like interesting, because it's almost like kids like we've learned that that's how we work better, but kids obviously, if they're all just kind of laptops, bit of note taking, they
Mm.
might not see that kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, like, I mean, pre a certain age, I don't know when,
Mm.
but pre, like a certain year, we are just conditioned, I guess, or we were
Yeah.
conditioned to take notes, and we had to do that, and so that became like habit,
Hmm.
and like a necessity versus, yeah, absolutely with kids, because it's no longer like this standard or this habit that we have, especially
Hmm.
with kids doing a lot of their assessments or the reports on the laptop, then I feel like, yeah, maybe they don't see that, like writing is so much
Mm.
better for memory retention,
Mm.
because maybe that just isn't the case for them either,
Yeah, definitely.
So I totally agree with you. I totally see
Mm.
what you're saying.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Do you think that like AI is gonna impact as well kids? Like how do you think that's gonna impact education and, well, more specifically handwriting, but yeah, what are your opinions on that with
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I do I do think that it will massively, it is already massively impacting education,
mm,
um just in a lot of different ways, and you can see it everywhere, from like ideation, like coming up with ideas, generating new ideas, to like again grammar, it affects kids reading,
mm,
and reading comprehension as well.
yeah,
I think because again, students aren't needing to, or they found clever workarounds, of
mm,
like, and I think I'm pretty sure that a lot of the students that I teach, especially the older ones, rely
mm,
on something like ChatGPT or
yeah,
AI to
yeah,
come up with ideas, to come up with solutions.
mm,
Um, when ideally again, but it's kind of, I think about it and I go like, for example, in design, we have students analyze previous work. Like, is it that different from being inspired by some product that already exists?
Mm.
Is it different for art, for example, to be inspired by, like Van Gogh's Starry Night, and
Yeah,
then make
true.
something that's very similar to that? You know what I mean? So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
also finding that journey. But anyway, um, so I can absolutely see the impact of AI on handwriting. I guess that's, yeah, again, it's linked very much with the laptop use, right? Is like
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT and AI, um, and like any kind of assignment that would necessitate, or
Mm-hmm.
like would be good for students to use AI to come up with a solution for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be on the computer. It would be like a essay or a Word document.
Mm.
I do. I work with the year 11 students on something called personal project, which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
them making, students have basically a few months to make a product and
Nice.
then write a 15-page report about like the process of making it. So they have to do some
Mm-hmm.
research, they have to demonstrate how they use skills to make it, and then they have to have like an evaluation stage or feedback
Mm-hmm.
stage for it. And obviously, no one's writing that by hand, but again, um, because it's 15 pages.
Yeah.
But I can see again that AI use is heavily involved there and can become a really contentious issue. So
Mm-hmm.
it is really with the longer pieces that
Yeah.
students, and I don't know. I mean, like, did we used to write 10-page papers by hand? Like, I'm trying to think back and
I
go, did
remember
we did
in
we write so much by hand?
Yeah, well, in English, it was more,
Yeah.
it was story writing, and obviously it wasn't like
Mm.
write 10 pages, but it was write for the next 45 minutes, and
Yeah.
that's obviously, yeah, looking back is a long time to just be writing,
Yeah.
and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's crazy
Yeah.
that kids
Yeah.
almost
100%.
aren't really doing things like that, because then when it got to exam season,
Mm.
it was those you'd get like six different, like, for this is more for English, I remember this, and it would be like
Yeah.
6 pages of lines after a big question,
Yeah.
and it would
Yeah.
panic me
Yeah.
because I'd be like, oh my God, I've got to fill it all out because this is basically what I've got to write like I've got to fit it because that's how much
Yeah.
they're expecting, kind of thing, but obviously that's not the
Yeah.
case, but
Yeah. 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 I get you.
really, yeah,
I
interesting.
think, yeah, and I remember actually I would have like nail marks on the inside of my
Hmm.
hand because I'd like from
Yes.
writing for a long
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
so like I'd get calluses on my hands as well,
Yeah.
and now I imagine kids don't have that kind of a problem now,
No.
especially because kids have like really long nails these days as well, and I think that's
So funny.
maybe that's part of the reason, maybe that's not part of the reason, but part of like the signs,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, that
people
they're not
typing more
struggling.
often. they're
Yeah.
not they're not struggling necessarily. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like
Yeah.
if I had super long nails, and I was, writing, it would be a struggle if I had to do it for a long amount of time,
Hmm.
I guess, at
Definitely.
the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there is enough emphasis on handwriting as a life skill? Like enough emphasis put on handwriting as a life skill at all?
Not where I've seen it in school. I think in
Right.
English class,
Mm.
it is emphasized as a skill. And I think, like, where possible, I will again try to have students be mindful of how they write. Um,
Mm.
but again, I think it becomes secondary to
Yeah.
content and learning the content, and then demonstrating that the students have processed the content and they're demonstrating their knowledge.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think, maybe Ali would be able to tell you better in terms of, I'm not sure if you've already had your meeting with her,
Mm.
in terms of how it is in English class. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it is generally not emphasized enough as
Mm.
a um, as a life skill,
Yeah.
100%.
Interesting. Well, yeah, perfect. Well, that's all my questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So thank
Oh,
you
I
so
thought it was. I
much.
thought it'd be more. No, it's quite all right.
Well, because I went through and because you were picking up like on some stuff. Thought, yeah, well, she's already said that. Don't need to ask that one now.
Oh,
Um,
great. Okay, sorry. I
but
hope
yeah.
I didn't ramble too much.
No,
And
that was extremely helpful, definitely.
oh, okay, good, good. I hope you got the information you needed.
Yeah, I really have. Thank you.
Okay,
Um,
fab.
but yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, if there are any other questions, please do feel
Mm.
free to email me or,
I have,
I'm happy to chat again. But yeah.
yeah, I do have, well, I mean, I don't expect it if not, but I just thought I'd ask if you'd be able to kind of, when you're marking, it would be great to kind of have like a little or photo of like a child's handwriting. Obviously, I don't know if you're able to do that, but if there's
Okay.
kind of like any like good examples of like handwriting that's harder to read, that would be really, really helpful as well, just so I can put it in my document. But obviously I don't expect because that's quite
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can. Like for example, if it's just a selection, would it have to be um, like how much text would it need to be for you to
just like literally a
just like a
snippet.
small
Yeah,
paragraph
yeah,
or
wouldn't
like part of a sentence or
couple
what would
couple
be
sent couple sentences, like doesn't need to
sentences?
kind of
Okay.
say about like what the child's writing about or anything, kind of, do you know what I mean? Like it
Okay.
would just
Yeah,
be
yeah,
just
yeah. Okay.
literally just to see almost the kind of,
Hmm.
do you know what I mean? Like yeah. But
Okay. Let me see if I can, and if I can, I'm more than happy to send
thank
that
you.
information to you.
Thank you very much. But
Absolutely.
yeah, no
Okay.
pressure if not, because I understand
Okay. Okay.
that could be like funny with, I
Yeah,
don't know, school
sometimes in
rules or
education they're
yeah.
finicky about these things, but I'll keep you posted.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it
No
was lovely
worries.
meeting
Thank
you.
you. Yeah,
Um,
lovely meeting you too, and yeah, good luck with everything.
thank you.
I hope it goes well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well,
All right. Thanks. It
perfect.
was lovely to chat.
Yeah, take care. Bye bye bye.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.